English story reading. Leo often felt a heavy weight of frustration whenever he thought about learning English. The sheer volume of vocabulary, confusing grammar, and rapid pace of native speakers seemed an insurmountable challenge. He dreamt of conversing fluently, yet his tongue felt tied, and his mind blanked whenever the opportunity arose to speak. He yearned for linguistic clarity in daily interactions. His initial attempts at mastering the language felt like walking through a dense fog. He tried rote memorization of countless word lists, spent hours poring over dry grammar textbooks, and attended various online classes. Yet, despite his persistent efforts, the progress felt agonizingly slow and often disheartening. He couldn't quite grasp how to truly integrate all the scattered pieces. One day, amidst his despair, a friend suggested he try English story reading. This was a novel idea for Leo, who had always focused on rigid study. He picked up a simple novel, hesitant but curious. The act of immersing himself in a narrative, rather than isolated sentences, promised a fresh perspective on language acquisition and understanding. To his surprise, reading stories became a gateway to naturally how to learn words. Words he had struggled to remember in isolation suddenly made sense within the context of a thrilling plot. Each new character and twist in the story brought a deeper, intuitive understanding of vocabulary and idioms, making retention feel far more effortless than before. The joy of understanding a complex plot, even with unfamiliar vocabulary, was immense. He wasn't just learning words, he was absorbing cultural nuances and sentence structures implicitly. This method transformed his perception of how to learn English from a tedious chore into an engaging adventure. He found himself looking forward to his daily reading sessions. Realizing that how to learn words became less of a chore, Leo's motivation surged. He devoured books, his understanding growing exponentially. However, a significant hurdle remained, translating this newfound comprehension into fluid, confident speech. He could read and understand, but speaking felt like an entirely different, more daunting skill to master. Gradually, his how to learn English journey felt more organic, less like a rigid academic pursuit. Yet, the ghost of speaking anxiety persisted. He often found himself rehearsing dialogues in his head, perfecting every syllable, only to stumble and freeze when a real conversation began. This disconnect between knowledge and application was profoundly frustrating. However, speaking remained a massive hurdle, causing Leo immense anxiety. He could comprehend intricate paragraphs, analyze complex sentences, but when it came to forming his own, simple phrases, his mind often went blank. The fear of making a mistake, of sounding foolish, loomed large, effectively silencing his budding linguistic confidence despite his progress. He would rehearse sentences endlessly in his mind, perfecting every grammatical nuance and pronunciation. Yet, when faced with an actual English speaker, his carefully constructed phrases would crumble. The pressure to how to talk in English perfectly, without any flaws, overwhelmed him, leading to awkward silences and a deepening sense of self-doubt. The persistent question, "Why I always make mistakes," echoed loudly in his thoughts after every failed attempt. He'd replay conversations, dissecting every slip-up, every mispronounced word, every grammatical error. This relentless self-criticism created a vicious cycle, eroding his confidence further and making him dread any opportunity to engage orally. There were moments of utter despair when he'd think, why you should not learn English. The effort seemed so disproportionate to the results. He questioned if he simply lacked the talent, the linguistic gene necessary for fluency. This internal struggle threatened to extinguish the flickering flame of his ambition entirely, leaving him feeling utterly defeated. A period of deep discouragement set in, almost leading him to give up entirely on his English learning goals. He felt trapped in a loop of inadequacy, seeing no tangible progress in his speaking ability despite his dedication to reading. The dream of fluent conversation seemed more distant than ever, a mirage he could never truly reach. Then, serendipitously, he met an old mentor, a wise woman named Elena, at a community language exchange event. She exuded a calm confidence that was both comforting and inspiring. Leo, desperate for guidance, hesitantly shared his long-standing frustrations with his English-speaking struggles, feeling vulnerable yet hopeful for some insight from her. Elena listened patiently to his English-learning frustrations, nodding thoughtfully as he poured out his heart. She understood the immense pressure learners often put on themselves. Her empathetic demeanor immediately put him at ease, making him feel understood, not judged. Her wisdom seemed to emanate from years of observing language acquisition processes. After a long pause, Elena suggested a seemingly simple, almost radical idea to him. It wasn't about more grammar books or vocabulary lists. It was about something far more personal and consistent, a daily ritual. Her words piqued his curiosity, offering a glimmer of hope where he had only seen darkness before. He leaned in attentively. "Talk in English just 1 page per day," she advised calmly, her eyes twinkling with profound understanding. "Choose any page from any book, any article, anything you've read. Then, simply talk about it aloud, to yourself, for 5 minutes." Leo was bewildered. It sounded almost too easy, too small to make a real impact on his struggle. She clarified that it wasn't about reading the page aloud, nor was it about formal presentation. It was about articulating his thoughts, summarizing the content, reacting to it, or explaining concepts from that single page. This focused, yet unscripted, practice was intended to bridge the gap between passive understanding and active verbal expression for him. This meant summarizing a page from any book or article, no matter the topic or complexity. Elena emphasized that the goal was not perfection, but consistent, active engagement with the language. It was about training his brain to think and express itself directly in English, bypassing the mental translation process that often hindered fluency. He was skeptical about this, how to make confidence in speaking, trick. Could something so seemingly trivial truly address his deep-seated fear and hesitation? His past experiences had taught him that only intensive, grueling study yielded any results. Yet, Elena's quiet conviction persuaded him to give her unconventional approach a genuine try. How could such a small task possibly make a difference? He wondered aloud to Elena. His mind raced, searching for the catch, the hidden complexity. He had always believed that significant progress demanded significant effort and sacrifice. Elena simply smiled, reiterating the power of consistency and small, manageable steps for long-term growth. But he decided to try it. Anything was better than his current state of stagnation and despair. He returned home that evening, picked a random magazine, and flipped to an article about global economics. His heart pounded as he stared at the words, preparing himself for this strange new linguistic experiment suggested by Elena. He picked a simple children's storybook, a familiar tale from his childhood in his native language, to begin his daily practice. It felt less intimidating than a complex news article. He read one page, then closed the book, taking a deep breath, before attempting to articulate its content aloud in English, feeling immense pressure. The first day, he struggled immensely to articulate even a few coherent sentences about the simple story. His mind felt like a tangled ball of yarn, his tongue clumsy and unwilling to cooperate. The silence in his room amplified his frustration, each hesitant word feeling like a monumental effort, far from fluent expression. His tongue felt heavy, his thoughts tangled, utterly frustrated by the slow, painful process. He stammered, paused, and often reverted to his native language mentally. The gap between what he wanted to say and what he could actually articulate felt vast and insurmountable. It was a humbling, yet profoundly illuminating, initial experience. The ghost of "why I always make mistakes" loomed large, whispering doubts into his ear. He felt foolish, incompetent, and wondered if Elena's advice was simply too simplistic for his complex issues. The urge to abandon the exercise after just one day was incredibly strong, battling his underlying commitment to personal improvement. Yet, despite the initial discomfort, he committed to the 1 page per day discipline, remembering Elena's calm conviction. He set a timer for 5 minutes and forced himself to speak, regardless of how awkward or imperfect his words sounded. This consistent daily ritual slowly began to form a new, positive habit within his learning routine. He began to record himself, listening back to his own voice, initially cringing at his numerous errors and hesitations. It was an uncomfortable, yet brutally honest, mirror to his current speaking ability. This self-assessment, though painful, provided valuable insights, highlighting areas for improvement without external judgment from others. This painful self-evaluation was part of his growth process now, a necessary step towards self-awareness and improvement. He learned to identify recurring grammatical issues, common pronunciation pitfalls, and patterns in his vocabulary usage. The recordings became his personal, unbiased language coaches, guiding him towards clearer and more confident expression. Slowly, incredibly slowly, things began to shift within him. The initial dread transformed into a milder apprehension, then gradually into a sense of routine. The words began to flow with slightly more ease, the pauses becoming less frequent. He noticed subtle improvements in his sentence structure and overall fluency, day by day. He started noticing patterns in his own common mistakes, which helped him target his learning more effectively. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by every error, he could categorize them and focus on mastering one type at a time. This systematic approach, born from daily self-reflection, made his improvement journey feel far more manageable. The pressure to how to talk in English perfectly, flawlessly, vanished entirely from his mindset. He understood that mistakes were simply part of the learning journey, not a sign of failure. This mental shift was liberating, allowing him to experiment with language more freely, without the crippling fear of imperfection holding him back. It became an exploration, a daily linguistic puzzle to solve, rather than a high-stakes performance. Each day brought a new topic from his chosen page, a new challenge to articulate his thoughts clearly. This playful approach fostered a sense of curiosity and excitement, transforming his perception of English practice into an enjoyable activity. The stories he read, the words he learned through story reading, found their authentic voice through his daily speaking practice. Vocabulary he had only recognized passively now became readily available for active use. The connection between his reading comprehension and his verbal expression strengthened remarkably, bridging the two essential language skills. His vocabulary, once a passive reservoir of known words, became active and responsive. He could retrieve words faster, apply them in appropriate contexts, and even experiment with synonyms and idiomatic expressions. This active engagement through daily speaking practice cemented his lexical knowledge, transforming recognition into confident, spontaneous usage. The fear of judgment gradually receded with consistent practice. He realized that most people were understanding and appreciative of his efforts, rather than critical of his imperfections. This external validation, combined with his internal growing confidence, created a positive feedback loop, encouraging him to speak even more frequently and openly. He stopped asking why I always make mistakes so often. Instead, his focus shifted from self-criticism to constructive analysis. He recognized that making errors was an inevitable and crucial part of the learning process, providing valuable feedback for improvement. This changed perspective empowered him to embrace rather than dread his mistakes. Instead, he focused on correcting them, learning from each attempt, seeing every mistake as a stepping stone. He'd note down difficult phrases or pronunciation issues and specifically work on them the next day. This proactive approach to error correction accelerated his progress significantly, turning weaknesses into areas of targeted strength. His "How Make Confidence in Speaking" blossomed unexpectedly and naturally. It wasn't about sudden breakthroughs, but about the cumulative effect of hundreds of small, daily speaking sessions. Each minute he spoke, each word he uttered, contributed to building a robust foundation of self-assurance in his English abilities. He even found himself initiating conversations, albeit short ones, with colleagues and strangers. The internal debate of whether to speak or remain silent diminished significantly. The joy of genuine communication, however brief or imperfect, far outweighed the residual fear of making an occasional error in his conversations. The thought of why you should not learn English was now a distant, faded memory, replaced by a deep sense of accomplishment. He no longer saw English as a burden, but as a fascinating world waiting to be explored. His perception had shifted from obligation to passion, fueling his continuous linguistic growth effortlessly. He realized that the journey was infinitely more important than the destination of perfect fluency. English learning was a continuous process of discovery, filled with small victories and valuable lessons from every mistake. This acceptance of imperfection liberated him, making the entire experience far more enjoyable and sustainable long-term. English wasn't a formidable mountain to conquer, but a flowing river to navigate, with its currents and eddies. He learned to enjoy the ride, adapting to its challenges rather than fighting them. This metaphorical shift in perspective allowed him to approach his learning with a sense of adventure, not overwhelming dread or anxiety. His "Learn English Through Stories" foundation was solid, providing him with a rich understanding of vocabulary and context. This extensive reading background now served as an invaluable resource for his daily speaking practice, ensuring he always had material and linguistic frameworks to discuss and explore effectively. Now, talk in English just one page per day, became an effortless and enjoyable part of his daily routine. It no longer felt like a task, but a moment of mindful linguistic engagement. His thoughts flowed more freely, transforming into coherent sentences without the previous struggle or internal hesitation that used to plague him constantly. His mind effortlessly translated thoughts into spoken words now, a seamless transition that once seemed impossible. The internal translator, once a bottleneck, had almost disappeared, allowing for natural, spontaneous expression. This newfound fluidity made conversations truly engaging, enabling him to connect with others on a deeper, more personal level. He still made occasional errors, of course, but they didn't define his progress or undermine his confidence anymore. They were simply minor detours on his journey, easily corrected and quickly forgotten. This acceptance of imperfection was perhaps his greatest achievement, liberating him from the crippling fear that once held him captive. Leo had truly discovered how to learn English in his own unique, highly personalized way. It wasn't about following a rigid curriculum or achieving abstract perfection. It was about consistent, mindful practice, embracing mistakes, and finding joy in the process itself. His journey was a testament to the power of tailored learning strategies. Confidence surged through him, allowing him to communicate freely and joyfully in diverse situations. He could express complex ideas, share personal anecdotes, and engage in lively debates without hesitation. The world, once closed off by language barriers, now felt open and accessible, full of exciting new possibilities for connection. He proved that persistent, mindful practice triumphs over fear and self-doubt. His journey was a powerful testament to the idea that even small, consistent efforts can lead to profound, transformative results. It wasn't about innate talent, but about unwavering dedication and a willingness to step outside his comfort zone daily. His story became an inspiration for many struggling learners he encountered online and in person. He shared his journey openly, encouraging others to adopt similar small, sustainable habits. His experience resonated deeply with those who felt overwhelmed by the traditional, often intimidating, methods of language acquisition and fluency. He advocated tirelessly for small, consistent efforts over overwhelming, unsustainable tasks. Don't try to climb the whole mountain in one day, he would advise. Just take one step, consistently, every single day. This philosophy transformed the daunting prospect of fluency into a series of achievable, empowering daily micro-goals. And always, to embrace the journey of making mistakes, seeing them as essential guides, not failures. He emphasized that errors were invaluable feedback mechanisms, pointing towards areas that needed more attention and practice. Without mistakes, genuine learning and refinement simply cannot truly occur in any meaningful way. Because mistakes were not failures, but stepping stones forward on the winding path to proficiency. Each error was a lesson learned, a boundary pushed, a new insight gained into the intricacies of the English language. This profound paradigm shift liberated learners from the fear of imperfection, fostering resilience and growth. Leo's fluency became a living testament to the power of patience, daily dedication, and self-compassion. He showed that English acquisition wasn't about reaching an impossible standard, but about continuous improvement and celebrating every small victory along the way. His voice was a beacon of hope for many others. His voice, once hesitant and riddled with self-doubt, now resonated with clear conviction and natural cadence. He spoke not just with accuracy, but with personality and genuine expression. The transformation was truly remarkable, a testament to how consistent, targeted practice can reshape one's linguistic identity entirely. English, once a burden, became a liberating tool for connection, understanding, and personal growth. It opened up new worlds of information, diverse cultures, and meaningful friendships. Leo's journey was a powerful reminder that true language mastery lies not in perfection, but in the courage to speak, learn, and evolve.